We're here. Season 2, episode 18. No, season.
It's still the first season, I think. I mean,
it's still the first season, episode 18.
How do you want to determine seasons?
However you feel like it. Maybe 20 is a good number, or 24, or 9. I don't know. Could be anything.
My other
18,
podcast.
18 is quite good. 18 is quite good, I think.
My other podcast, we do it through the school year, basically, from September to June is a season.
That's quite good too.
Because it's a teaching thing, so it's possible. You know, we started before the back to school, but we could go on until like May, and then call that a season, I suppose, perhaps.
Yeah, let's do that. So we're here after a 2-week break. It's been a while since I've spoken to Willem.
Yeah, it feels like tons of things have happened.
Loads of things have happened.
That's also true.
Although I'm intrigued by your T-shirt this week. It looks like an egg.
Yeah, it's my Sunday brunch T-shirt.
Oh, it's an egg on
riding bacon.
Bacon. That's very good.
It is good, right?
Yeah, and we're both wearing hoodies.
Yeah.
You're going to zip up your hoodie.
It's getting slightly colder in the apartment.
Okay,
so as you were just pointing out, I think I might be just starting a cold. I was outside for a while yesterday. That's cool.
Hopefully not. This is a Deftones hoodie.
Very nice.
That I got from when I went to see them. They're one of my favorite bands. But I am wearing the Rick and Morty mashup.
Oh, cool. I had
that?
not seen this.
Squanch Wars, and it's
That's
Star
gorgeous.
Wars.
Very
I thought
cool.
I wore it before. Have I not worn it before?
I didn't think so, but maybe.
Oh, well,
I'm just wearing my warm burgundy
looks like
that has like just
signed.
stuff inside. Just tell me how quick.
And I've got the Star Wars coffee mug that's just getting very worn and looks like it's got character now.
Very nice. I mean, I still have my Little Prince one. That's just one of my 2 regular ones.
So the question...
Like Calvin and Hobbes on the wall. Oh, yeah, the question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. But before we get to... Well, actually, in the process of answering the question, you'll notice that I'm growing a moustache for Movember. I should post a link to that.
Yeah.
Movember's...
I just shaved. I'm not doing Movember. I haven't done it in ages, actually.
So this is my...
You do it every year, don't you?
I do it every year. It's the 7th year in a row, but I've done it. I think I've done it 2 or 3 years before that. So it's like 8 or 9 years I've done it. And you're going to see it every episode get longer. So I will keep it and see how it goes. But I'll come back to that in the process of answering today's question.
All right.
So I went back to school this week. This week was the first week after half term, and the first week off. My first week back after an extended absence, which will get explained in this episode. So, and it felt like a month this week. So on Friday, I was teaching a class, psychology class, and I told them about the podcast, the live stream, Sunday, roughly 10 a.m. Join us. They know about it. They've seen it on my YouTube channel. They think it's great. This was the guy who watched one episode when he was drunk and thought it was really good. So I said, I need some questions. And he goes, yeah, here's the question. So this is today's question. You ready?
Okay. I'm as ready as I'll ever be, as usual.
The question is, why are we here? I said to him, is that really your question? He said, yeah, really. I'd love to hear it. Like, why are we here?
You're really asking me that.
I thought he was joking. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He was completely serious. Why are we here? So I thought, okay, that's good. That's a good way to start this.
Is it?
Question. I think it is. So, Willem, why are we here?
Well, we're here because we took an appointment to be here at this particular time to have this conversation.
That's true. We are here live on YouTube over Zoom because we said we would be here.
This is going to accelerate my thinking of I've been meaning to write and think about why I don't think why is that great a question.
Oh yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah, because I read Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I quite like his videos. I've used them before in assemblies, and you're like you don't like him, and you think why is the wrong question to start with. So as usual,
I don't necessarily think it's wrong. I think it's limiting.
Right. So as usual, you are questioning the question. So the question we had this week is why are we here, and you're taking apart the question, which is
well. I could just start by answering. This is just a matter of debate as to why, and as usual, pulling it apart. What does it mean? The general why we're here. It could be anything from there's a meteorite that struck the earth and gave some, life-giving atoms or some kind. Or life got developed after the Big Bang. There's a bit of that going on too.
Yeah.
And one species of primates took over the world, and here we are.
Yep.
In short, I mean that's one way to answer that particular question.
God snapped his fingers in there.
Yeah, there's the whole God camp. Yeah, sure. The whole God camp is, he had 7 days to get things started, and he made people in his image. He was like, there should be more people looking like me around here. I think something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
That's why
I'm
we're
not
here,
very
then.
strong on the religion side of things. I think I didn't even finish Genesis. I must have read some Genesis in the Bible.
So you didn't have the whole indoctrination like I did?
Oh, no, not at all.
I was brought up Catholic.
If any indoctrination, mine was like, there's no God and religion's a sham.
Okay. Yeah, no, mine was the polar opposite. I learned how to pray.
Oh, my father was raised Protestant, so as a kid, but then he didn't hand over any of that. And on my mom's family, just generally anti-clerical, anti-religion, anti-organized thinking, and generally atheist or certainly doubtful about any kind of greater power of that kind.
Would you say you're an atheist?
Yeah, I'm an atheist. Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because that's something that I had. I was not so willing to state out that I was an atheist because I thought, it seemed like a strong position. But that said, believing in God is a strong position too, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just when I read the Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. I think it was The Selfish Gene that I read, or it was another one. But I did read The Selfish Gene, but I can't remember which one. I read that and I was like, yeah, I'm an atheist. Why was that so complicated to work out?
The other book that he wrote that people really go on about is the God Delusion.
It was the God Delusion. You're right. And then I read The Selfish Gene afterwards. It was the God Delusion.
Although The Selfish Gene was written before, wasn't it? Pretty sure. I think The Selfish Gene was written before.
I think so too. Yeah. Yeah.
I read the God
Delusion. You're right. It was the God Delusion I read. And then I was like, yeah, I'm an atheist. Why was that so complicated? And I also have that I got last year maybe I should read that next. Christopher Hitchens, also kind of like famous free thinker atheist about, I can't remember what the name of the book is. I'm looking towards my shelves. And then of course I've read some books by Sam Harris, also another, known kind of, or even controversial to some extent, free thinker and atheist. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm clear I'm an atheist. I don't think there is a God. If other people want to believe there is a God, cool.
Yeah. So why are we here? We're here because.
Why are we here? I don't know. I'm stuck with that question. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. It feels like every direction I could go in is just going to be a bunch of banalities.
Yeah.
And stuff that has been overdone and overtalked. That's part of the reason why I don't really like such a wide, generic question. In the same way that it's difficult to create with a blank canvas. I mean, there's a certain point you could argue any kind of creation does go from a blank canvas. Mm-hmm. But why are we here? And I guess I'll talk some more, and I'll try to riff. I'm not satisfied because I would have liked, and I do, but this is going to help, I guess. I'm not sure this is going to be the most interesting one for the students or for anybody to watch, but you never know. But I guess I'll just use this to start thinking out loud about why I think why is not such a great question to begin with.
Yep, do that, and then
And
I'll
it is
give
a
you a
controversial,
different perspective.
it's a controversial perspective or position to say that. And I would definitely would have wanted to be clearer about why I say that. And it's not that I don't ever want to use it, just I did just now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the first point. Why calls for an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So why calls for a reason, an effect to then determine a cause.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay,
why
yeah,
you're
yeah.
like, well, this thing, which is an effect, and then you're like, why this? That's the cause. And then there's a cascade of things. So that as long as you keep asking, like a kid would, like, why this, why this, why this, you go back to you're forced to go to well, I think you're forced. You're not necessarily forced, but where I would go naturally, I think most people, is to a cascade of cause and effect that goes back to, well, the Big Bang, if you want to go far enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why are things the way they are? And look, start with why, Simon Sinek. So one of the things I don't like about that kind of thing is, well, and why altogether, and I'm going to mix things already,
Yeah, that's right.
already, but
That's the point.
is that it forces you to go to the broadest possible definition, and then everybody has the same thing. So start with why, whether it's personal or business, and then you go fast enough to cause an effect, and you're like, so that everybody's happy, or some other definition of like the broadest possible meaning. And you're like, well, wait a minute. The why of every business or of every person can be that if you go broad enough, but if you go broad enough, does it have any significance? Is it useful in any kind of way? It's interesting. So in the same way that you go, okay, well, why are we walking on 2 feet? You're like, well, because our ancestors were living in the plains of Africa, and actually they worked out that they could run a certain way, and I can't remember what the reasons were, but
Yeah.
some other reasons. Oh,
Yeah.
well, why is it that way? But well, because our primate ancestors lived in the trees and then dropped at a certain point. Oh, well, why did that happen? Well, actually, we branched off from a certain kind of primate at a certain point that waxed off of that, branched off, and from trees. And I'm not even doing this particularly well. I don't feel like I'm very awake, but I think you get the point.
Yeah.
That you can go far enough, and you're
Yeah.
like, well, why is it this way? You're like, well, because our ancestors at this particular point decided to grow lungs and walk out of the sea for some weird reason. And then why would that? And you just go back all the way to a singular cell organism that developed, we don't really know how, maybe because of an asteroid, maybe just because it just spontaneously appeared. I'm not even sure what the theories of that.
Like in Prometheus, an alien landed and triggered a biogenetic reaction that started life.
Yeah. So there you go. That's why we're here. But wait a minute. Where does the asteroid come from? Oh, okay. Well, let's go there. It's just like the asteroid maybe picked it up from another planet, possibly millions of years before, wandered around the galaxy, perhaps. So point being, it's just a cascade of things that you never get anywhere.
Yeah.
Or you do get places, but if you really dig, it's never satisfying.
Okay.
Because you can always look for another explanation or another reason to the why. Now, it's not that as I said, it's not that it's wrong. And I think there are circumstances where it's particularly appropriate to wonder why. I think science is a great one because it hones our curiosity and questions, and you go and experiment and look for reasons why such phenomena happens the way it does.
Mm-hmm.
But the premise of a scientific theory and discovery is that it's only ever correct as for the length of time and the window of the kind of window you're looking at. If somebody else comes at it from another perspective, or some new knowledge comes up, and you realize, oh, well, actually, there was a wider perspective to this whole thing. So all the rules by which we lived, Newtonian physics, for example, gets turned on their head when they go into quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only it's only true within the certain frame of reference that you're looking at. And truth I just brought in, that's another difficult one. But I think why also calls for there should be one explanation that explains and should be satisfying. But I think life and the universe and everything, more often than not, and particularly when it's down to what's going on in our own thoughts, interactions, we only have a limited view of our own, even our own decision-making process personally. We have an even more limited perspective on everything else. So I think we can easily drive ourselves a little bit cuckoo crazy trying to work out what the right why is. And that's part of the reason I think that the circles of Simon Sinek, and I haven't read the whole book, I really should at some point, seem to be attractive when he talks about them in his talks and his TED Talks. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't think that is what is the most useful thing to put at the heart of a circle to consider something.
Right.
I don't think you start with why. I don't think why is not a use. I think actually, and by the way, my answer to that one, to his circles, is that you should start with who. Because who you are is both something that you inherit because you've developed yourself to be in certain ways. If you're a business, you just get to decide that entirely. But that not entirely, because a business is a mix of all the different people that make it. The founders when they begin. So, but you can put a stake in the ground as to who you are, why you behave the way you are, or why is your who, I don't think is as useful a question. So if you are looking for, and that's the other thing, is for the start with why type of questions, which is just you're looking for purpose. That's the whole goal, right? I think. And if you're looking for purpose, one thing is not better than another.
Yeah.
One type of purpose is not better than another. So it's a bit of a sham to make it look like a scientific process. Now, of course, most coaches and most people, including myself, like Simon Sinek, rely on models to explain and make sense of the world.
Yeah.
But most of the models are fraught at best. They're just convenient ways to explain a complicated world and it's not a scientific world. It's a world of meaning, and it's a world of subjection. It's a world of, there's no objectivity into like, this is how I want to talk about my business, and this is my business's purpose, or this is my personal purpose. It is, to a certain degree, a mix of all the different things that make up who you are or who your business is. So I think there's more value into beginning with who you are, because you get to say a lot, then it is a creation. And then you can say what you're about, or you can also explain why you're doing the things that you're doing. But what's the point?
There's a couple of things that I want to pick up on what you said.
Yeah, please do, because I don't know. I don't know if it's making any kind of sense when I'm saying.
No, to me, it's making complete sense, because one of the things I'm getting from what you're saying is that the question why or even like why are we here? Why ends up being unsatisfying. It ends up being this overly pointless navel gazing that doesn't take you anywhere. So it becomes inherently unsatisfying and can end up just becoming a whole series of pointless things where nothing gets created. The thing I like about who, and I never considered it until you said it, is that it's made me think, whenever I take an action or whenever I do something, I'm making a declaration, or I'm putting a stake in the ground of who I am in the world.
Yeah.
Every act, every time I take an action, I am saying this is who I am. And there is like that I think that phrase has a lot of power. I am.
Like I think so too. And it's interesting because also the more I meditate, and the more you meditate, the more you realize that the thoughts running through your head are just stuff that comes up, and you're like, and you realize they're meaningless. I mean, they're not meaningless. They are independent of you. And that becomes the whole big question. Who am I? That's a whole other pendant. That's a whole other ball game. But the point being that you realize that the thoughts come and go, they rise, they disappear, they rise, they disappear, of all kinds, with very little control over what the thought is. And you're like, well, wait a minute, wondering why I'm having that thought or wondering why that thought is appearing doesn't seem to be a very useful time spent to wonder about that. Now, we all do, and I think it's part of being human to wonder why. It is human. Kids do it immediately. They want to know how things work and why such is such, which is, again, in the realm of science, it works. That's what posits and what the engine to a lot of scientific research is, to wonder why something works the way it does. Including philosophy, where you could argue that it ends up in a lot of navel gazing, but there's a lot of people that put out a lot of thinking and a lot of theorizing in different directions, and with why as an engine to I'm having such a hard time mixing between French and English. Ridiculous. Anyway.
But it sounds like you're
make the whole thing go.
Yeah, to make the whole thing get to keep it all going. But it sounds like you're interested in creating something and like making something real, and that why doesn't really, or asking why we are here doesn't allow for that. It just becomes circular. Like the who am I, or who, beginning with who, allows for something real. That's certainly what I'm getting from what you're saying. It allows
I don't know about something real, but it allows for something to be created, whereas why you're going to look for an explanation somewhere else. And what makes which is a whole, and this is another open question, what makes the explanation of the why, or why we're here, satisfactory?
Yeah.
Because I don't know who's watching us. I don't know who asked the question. So it's a question that everybody asks themselves, except that I can only offer a satisfactory answer to that within the frame of reference that is valid to the person that is listening. So to use an easy example, I guess, but this is just going back to what we were talking about belief in religion. And there's a lot of opinion, belief, religion going on these days too. But if I offer an explanation of why we are here that is science-based, that won't satisfy the people who believe in God and who maybe literally believe that God created the earth. Then there's a lot of other people, I think they're probably a majority these days, although I don't know, who believe in God, but also believe that, there's the Big Bang and that happened too. So believe in God and science at the same time, which is also the magic of human belief, is it's extraordinarily strong, extraordinarily personal, and a belief doesn't need any kind of proof, which is, if you go back to the definition of belief, sorry about that. If you go back to the definition of belief, it is the feeling that something is true.
Oh, really? That's what the definition
belief is a feeling.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's an intimate belief, feeling, actually. Well, I'm pretty sure. I know because I looked at that when I was chatting about it with my brother. We're going a little bit away, but
no, we're not. I mean, but that's the whole point. But that's really interesting. Belief.
It's a state of mind or a habit. All right. So here, this is Merriam-Webster. Definition of belief: a state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or thing. There was something that I had seen about a feeling. Maybe it was another word. But
that idea of trust and confidence, like because
the trust and confidence is there. Yeah. The conviction of the truth. That's the one. It's conviction.
Conviction.
Yeah, which is the third. Conviction of the truth of some statement or the reality of some being or phenomenon, especially when based on examination or evidence, or something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as an opinion, something you believe. All right. I remember seeing something related that had to do with like the feeling of something to be true or to be correct. I can't remember what word it was.
Because if we like, I think what might be behind the question of why are we here is what leads to people believing something or having a belief is without having a structure, or without having a belief system or whatever it is that we could actually construct our lives around, it becomes very difficult to function. And I think in my opinion, and for teenagers, for people in school, for the question of why are we here, that I think it goes well with who am I. There's a whole process of discovery that goes with being in school, being a teenager, of like, who am I in the world? What am I about? What is the world about? Why are we here?
Yeah.
And that process doesn't always give satisfactory answers. And
no, and it's a tough one. It's a lifelong research, which we talk about regularly, about knowing yourself. And of course, why are we here comes with it. It's just a natural question to be asking yourself. I would say it's not necessarily worth, I mean, it is worth looking at. It's not worth delving into for all that long, I don't think necessarily, because it doesn't lead to anything. Now, some people will completely disagree with me and say, no, that it's really important to have a why. But I'm like, well, it depends what we're talking about. So, for example, if I'm doing a piece of work and I'm selling something and I'm building a strategy for a client, it's usually important that I have some kind of reason why.
Okay.
Reason why suggesting going in a different direction. Now, some people, and I know function like that. Some people function like that in my field of work or in a lot of fields of work. And they're going to just disagree with me because they think maybe I'm completely crazy. But some people really think there is one explanation and no other. So they're looking for the right one.
Okay.
To, for example, let's say how somebody buys a product or how somebody buys a chocolate bar at a given time. And if you do the right research, you will find the right answer. I generally believe that everything's contextual and everything lives within the environment that they're operating in. So what matters to the behavior of, say, buying that chocolate bar matters insofar as the objective of the meeting that we have to build the brand in question. So I will look for the explanation that makes sense and that is that offers a reason why, but I don't believe that is the ultimate one because I don't think there is one.
So does that mean there are people you know who think that once they've found the answer, that's the answer, and then that's it?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure. But
I'm
pretty sure some people really, really look for the right answer to something, and then they believe there is just one. And I tend to not believe that.
If there's evidence
which is just
challenges their opinion, they're going to have to restructure everything.
Probably, yeah.
Wow. And that's okay. So this is,
and I could be wrong. This is from hearsay, and there was just out of a Twitter exchange with a couple of people about this idea of why that I still need to write about, which we'll see if this call is useful. I need to get back to writing stuff. I haven't done any of my Playful Strategy videos for weeks. I've been ensconced in just teaching for the month of October, preparing classes and teaching, and it took a lot of time.
Teaching
and I also went away
your life
weekends,
away.
But
you got to be careful about that. You really need strong boundaries, otherwise it will take over your life. This is one of the reasons why I do things like this podcast, this live stream, things like writing, things like other than teaching. That's why I do other stuff. Otherwise, teaching would just take over everything.
Yeah, and it's not even a full time for me. It's not even a full time job at all, but I'm spending a lot of time on it.
Yeah, you want to boundaries are really important. I think they're really important, particularly with teaching, particularly. So, but this whole thing about why, I think it might point to that human beings want a reason for everything. They want an explanation, and they want the quick one. Maybe it's even more so now with the internet and with the way life is and opinions. Everyone wants a quick explanation.
Yeah, last time we were talking about the shallows and the search engine, it created culture. It was funny because I told that to some students. One of them didn't like that at all. But or at least there was some lively debate after that, which was interesting. It was good. But yeah, we created a culture by which there is an answer to any of our questions, which is interesting. And then there's another way to answer just the overall why are we here, which is down to the selfish gene and or Sapiens, the Harari book, or just Richard Dawkins, is just that, a living organism is there to multiply and the genes want to multiply. So the reason you're here wondering about why life is just really to have more of our species on the planet.
Yep.
And the species, just like any gene, the job of the gene is to go forth and multiply, prosper, multiply, and it will. That's the argument of the selfish gene, if I remember correctly. It's just that it's going to find any habitat, and the habitat is just our bodies or any other species. That reminds me in the point about Sapiens from Harari. If you look purely at this at the level of the gene, wheat and corn have done extremely well in working with human beings and spreading across the whole agriculture, and just like having way more wheat and corn than was normally going to be possible by by trying to naturally spread. Now I'm giving intention to wheat and corn, but I'm repeating what he said. So he was giving intention to wheat and corn, but that's kind of the premise of the selfish gene, is to say that well, the job of the gene is to multiply. So really, the reason that you're here is to have more of the human Homo sapiens genes around.
Yep, he says a similar thing in Guns, Germs, and Steel, which is by Jared Diamond, which is an amazing book. I bought it for my dad. It's just one of those far-reaching books, and Harari refers to it. And it's a similar kind of idea that
somebody was telling me about Jared Diamond as well in another book, I think.
Yeah, he wrote another book called Collapse about how civilization.
Yeah, somebody was telling me to read that. I talked about that with a friend.
And whenever I think about collapse, I do think of Minecraft, and like you have a certain amount of resources to survive, and if you like one of my pupils was telling me about playing Minecraft in like super hardcore mode, where you have, I don't know how familiar you are with Minecraft, but the whole thing is that you can play in survival mode. Okay. And you have one of the first things you've got to do is like use the resources around you, like trees or whatever, to craft a shelter and build a shelter so you can survive. And if you don't survive through the night, monsters appear and just kill you. So like zombies and skeletons and all that kind of stuff. So you can play Minecraft in super hardcore mode, where you're on an island and you've got one tree, and you've got to use one tree to build what you need and then survive from there. And I think Jared Diamond is a really interesting thinker, because I think he's got multiple professorships in geography and anthropology and all sorts of stuff. And I thought Guns, Germs, and Steel was an amazing book, and he makes a similar point about wheat being, like giving intention to wheat and corn, and how effectively they've managed to spread and work with humanity, and how the domestication of agriculture, the domestication of crops, but also animals, has led to like the way the planet is and how things are spread and all that kind of stuff. Amazing book. I remember one of my pupils years ago said to me, "Sir, have you read Guns, Germs, and Steel?" And I would say no. And he'd go, "You have to read it. You have to read it." It would be on at me for ages. I never read it while he was still at school, and I finally read it, and I can see why, because it's amazing. I actually think, slightly controversially, I actually think it's better than Sapiens. But
cool. No, it's great. I need to read more books, to be honest. I'm finishing a small book called Zen in the Art of Archery, which is awesome.
Oh wow! I'm reading
my brother was telling me about a book called Humankind or something like that. Like a premise that we're all good and we're kind by profound nature or something like that, with a lot of examples. Apparently, this is pretty cool.
I've been reading A Return to Love, which I think is amazing. Very spiritual, semi-religious. I'm very spiritual, and I do believe in God, but not in the conventional like in the sky type thing. It's more akin to, and you're going to laugh, or you might laugh because I said this before to my pupils, but in general, it's more akin to the idea of the Force. That's kind of how I think of things. Like there's a. It
sounds like there's something animist about it. So you think there's like some kind of life force in all things?
Yeah, and we're part of it, and we're involved in it, and that kind of is a create.
But does it have consciousness?
It's a co-creation. Only as much as we do. Only as much as we do, and we're all
as a collective unconscious.
Yeah, it's like
one
that
kind of idea.
Kind of thing that we're all part of together. And however, whether humanity destroys itself or not, life will continue. Life will just keep going. but I don't believe that there is any inherent like purpose and reason and why to life other than what I choose to create.
Yeah, which is why the question why is a tricky one, particularly for yourself. If you wonder why we're here, you have the selfish gene explanation, which is one among different ones, but it's not extremely satisfying when you're thinking about yourself and why I'm here, or why we're here all together.
Yeah,
it's like, we're not really here for anything. It's just like you get to choose who you want to be and what you want to be about.
But I do think,
and if you want a reason why, you get to create it for yourself.
That's
with what
exactly
you've got.
What
you have to with what you've got. So with the pieces of the puzzle or the chessboard that you have available.
Yeah.
Which is like where you're born, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your friends, you don't get to choose like the Trump family, because you're not them.
But I do think what you're saying,
amount of money.
that point of choice, that point of choice I think is really important, because I think a lot of people wait to be told why, wait to be told their why. They don't. I think it's very difficult for some people to want to be responsible for, or to want to create it themselves.
I think most people don't want to be responsible. That's why we give power to like a few people, arguably. Or also that I had another idea on that point. It'll come back to you.
It'll come back to you. So while it comes back to you, one of the things that the reason I'm doing Movember, and the reason that I've been thinking a lot about why and who I am and why we're here, is because on September the 17th this year, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And then I had surgery to remove the cancer. It was removed. The prognosis is really good. I'm doing okay. I had a meeting with the cancer doctor, and he said, yes, your chances of survival and your chances of getting it are pretty low, and we were able to treat it. You'll be fine. So having been through all of that, and the questioning myself and questioning why am I here, I was even for a bit asking myself the question, why did this happen to me? Which is so pointless as to be useless.
But it's a natural question that it would come up. It's important to say.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. It's important to say, why me? That is a natural question. But I very quickly realized that would lead to nothing very helpful at all. So I was like, oh, that's kind of, because if I did ask that, and I did spend a lot of time thinking that, I'd be bitter and twisted every day, like, because I'd be trying to figure out why did it happen to me. And I'm not bitter and twisted. And I said to my wife, it'd be really easy for us to be bitter and twisted about life, because we don't have children, and that's something we'd love to have as well.
Yeah.
And we're not bitter. And she says, we're not like that. And I'm really glad that we're not. But I think that question, why me, is not very helpful. The question, why are we here, is only useful if you create your own answer and you're willing to say, this is who I am. But even then, why are we here becomes, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I going to, if
you're also placing when you say, why are we here, you're placing the onus someplace else.
Yes.
So you're assuming that you're not, but the why says there's got to be an explanation somewhere out there with somebody or with something that is not placing the responsibility on yourself.
And that is so well explained, and that's kind of what I was trying to say. And to make it really tiny and tangible, I've started to really look at, and I'm sure most of us do, what do I put on my social media profile as who I am? Who am I? What do I write there? And I've added in surviving testicular cancer as like something, because that's, to me, that's who I am. That's what's going on. And I am, and everything's looking really good, and I'm back to work, and everything's fine. And it's interesting that the way people relate to me is different. And something that's happened that really ties into this why am I here thing is why are we here thing is people at work have said to me, we've missed you. And then I think, not in a bad way, or good way, just in an interesting way. Like, okay, they said they missed me. What have they missed me for? What value do I provide? What do I bring to my school that has meant that people have missed me? So I actually started asking people, like, what did you miss about me? And some people have said, like, the way you question things. Other people have said the cheekiness. So I found that a really useful question to start looking at, well, what do I bring? And I think that might even be a more useful question than why are we here? What can I bring to this? Who am I in, what, rather than why are we here? Like, maybe what can I bring? I don't know if that makes sense. Or
No,
what
it does.
value
I mean,
can I provide?
I think it makes sense as much as like asking for, who you are, or yeah, I think it makes
Who,
sense. I think what can I bring to the table is kind of like what am I bringing to the table? What am I making as a difference? Or even though it's very generic to say that, with everything that's going on, so you get to ultimately create why you're here. Now, there's also just there's a lot of different, some people just don't believe in that as well. They'll think we're wrong to say that, which I'm like, all right, great, just suit yourself. You can go find your answer somewhere else if you want. But yeah, that's the best I've got, I think.
I do think there's a bit of a rising wave of challenge, disaffection, cynicism on the part of younger people, and they're looking for that. And certainly in my class, they see that. And a couple of interactions I've had in school have been in class with a class have been very much like, what can one person do? What can I can't do anything. What's the point? Like, why are we here? Like, just like, we're just going to die anyway. Why?
It's also a very teenage question to ask yourself.
Yeah. And it is,
which makes total sense. I mean, I've had those kinds of questions, and they don't totally disappear when you're not a teenager anymore. Yesterday night, I watched the Dave Chappelle's Sticks and Stones stand-up from last year on Netflix.
I think I've seen bits of it. He's great. I've seen him live.
He's great.
He's very good.
I've never seen him live, but the opening, I don't think I'm giving anything away from. I'll just give you the opening because it seems very appropriate to what you're talking about. And it's, I can't do it as well as he's doing it because he's so dark, and he's just fantastically how dark he is, but how he laughs at everything at the same time. It made me laugh like big time. But he opens his show by talking about Anthony Bourdain. And the fact that guy had like the most amazing dream job you could ever wish for. Traveling the world, meeting amazing people, eating the most delicious foods, exploring things. And he killed himself.
Yeah.
And then he goes on a tangent, talks about a bunch of other stories. Well, one main one, and talks about this guy he knew when he was a kid. Black dude, and basically describes, I can't remember the details, but he describes a rough life, right?
Yeah.
And that he caught up with this guy who was a 45-year-old, had a difficult life, managed to find a job as a manager of a fast food joint or something along those lines, right? Something that nobody wishes to be when they're 45. And he's like, well, that guy didn't kill himself. It probably never occurred to him either. Even though probably he should because of a shitty life.
Yeah.
So I don't know that helps particularly with a teenage angst, but existentialist angst, well, there's a lot of philosophers that wrote about it. I think going back to what we said earlier, why are we here? There's certain value to be asking the question, but from a scientific detached perspective. Because you will discover things on the way, then yes, do ask yourself that question and go and look. Read some philosophers, read some existentialists and Sartre and Camus and other ones.
Have you read any of those?
A few. I'd like to read more. I've read some books of Camus and Sartre. Existentialism and humanism is the big small.
So have you sat in a Parisian cafe smoking a cigarette, reading them with a cool house?
I mean, probably at some point, I'm sure. I think. I've not sat in any cafe
But yeah,
philosophy cafes like to discuss these things particularly. No. But yeah, so just like taking that as I was saying, like a scientific endeavor with a little bit of a step back, not attaching yourself to the whole thing. Like, why am I here? What am I? What is my purpose? What is my meaning? Not that this is a wrong question to be asking, as I said, but it is. I think there's a lot more value to think about who you are, and the why. You can look for explanations, but know that there's not one final single one. And if you read and if you find out a few books, or if you listen to us, or, you might get some directions for things to read that are explanation, rational, why, reasons, research, etc., that are very interesting. And you'll discover new things about yourself and about the world on the way. Poetry is another one to go to that is just pure art that doesn't need a rational scientific explanation, because it's just the pleasure and the beauty is in the word, is in the words themselves. So you get something, and you get perhaps arguably a link to something bigger, like what you were talking about is describing some kind of like life force or the force or something like that. You get connected perhaps to something that seems to be bigger, and I think some people look for that. But that is something that is constructed. You might inherit it. So being raised in a particular kind of religion and a set of beliefs, and you probably have some kind of set of beliefs from your parents and from your environment. So that's something that's a bit of it can be either an anchor to go back to that is a bit of solace, or depending on your circumstances, it might be the opposite of that. It might be something that is burdening you, in which case you can go look for something else that makes more sense to you. Again,
this is a really good point about art.
Yeah.
Art can really connect with something, with a why on a deep level. Like collaging, I found like really helpful, because especially with using images and color. One because I kept up collaging.
It's also nonverbal. It's you expressing nonverbal stuff out of your head, which can be great. It's like different avenues, because depending on how well that works for you, some people it works really well to have a rational explanation of why, and they'll be satisfied with that. Some others won't, and maybe art is another direction to go in.
Yeah, because the creative process I found really interesting, playing guitar and playing. So recently I've started recording, like creating a chord progression or the basis of a song and recording it. So what I do is I actually press record and then play something, and it morphs into an idea of a song, and I keep that. And I've got like 25 different ideas that could be the basis of a song. But there's something scary about, it feels a bit like jumping into the unknown, where I'm playing something, I don't know what's going to happen. And I have the same experience when I'm collaging. It's like an exploration of like, where's it going to go? Sometimes it has been very intentional. So I did one collage and I posted it. I have a blog of my collages. I posted it on social media. There's something called Blue Chicks color wheel, where different colors express different emotions. And I deliberately picked some very sad, depressed kind of colors. And I found this very striking image of a guy in prison, and an inmate, and he's like covering his head and he's just squatting on the floor. I had that in the middle, and I deliberately picked all these very downbeat, sad colors and put them all around it. And I remember when I posted it on social media, it got this load of comments and reaction and likes and like text and like whatever. And I was really surprised. It took me completely by surprise. And I've done another one, my experience of like testicular cancer and dealing with it. And again, it was an idea. I picked some very stark imagery and put it on there and used some colors and stuff. So I'll be posting that soon. But there's something that connects for me to something bigger when in the process of creativity. And I don't think young people really get to explore that very much, because even if you're doing art, it's like within the structure of the syllabus. Like it's, you have to do this, you have to do that. And in school, you have to do this, you have to do that. And like,
also if you do anything social media or whatever, I think there's for a lot of people, a utilitarian thing. As in to have more followers, to have success, to have rather than but some people will just create, I don't know, like TikTok videos for the fun of it. But a lot of, and maybe the vast majority of people do that. I don't know. I was wondering how many people, you maintain or publish things in order to have a certain image and profile, and
I think
only a few people. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, certainly at school, what I've seen with the pupils is they were interested in, when I put up my YouTube channel, and like, I think I put up yours as well on the screen, whatever. They were interested in the number of subscribers, the number of views, the number of likes. Like, how many followers do I have on Instagram? How many followers do you have on Twitter? Like, there is currency to that, and of course. Ultimately, it doesn't mean anything really.
Well, also that there's like a lot of bots.
Yeah.
And not fake followers, but just people, you can buy followers. Yeah. Maybe I should, because it's true that when you have a lot, it looks good. People are like, ooh, this is really a credible person. They have a lot of followers. You can't help it. You cannot help it. You will think that.
And we are in an episode of Black Mirror now, straight away. Oh, you haven't watched much of that, have you?
Not much. I need to watch more.
Yeah, because
you're like the news and the world is already depressing enough as it is. So
yeah, because you don't really like horror films, do you?
No, I don't.
That's not your thing. Yeah.
I still haven't watched Get Out, but I heard another perspective on it. Some other people told me it was just really bad, and I could just watch it because it's just a crap movie anyway.
Who said that?
My sister and my brother-in-law.
I was about to say, are they rich and white?
They're not rich. No, they're white. They're not rich. They're white. He's also extremely knowledgeable about cinema, and he was like, "Yeah, that's just a pale copy of another movie from previous years." I was like, "Really?
Which film though?"
He thought it was just like another version of the Stepford Wives, but rather than being about women, it's about black people and white fragility, of course. But he just thought it was badly acted, and it was just, and he does stand for controversial opinions sometimes of like movies where everybody's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not very good. Come on.
It was. I mean, I was watching it and it was I haven't seen Stepford Wives, but it does have that same feel about it. But it's when you translate it and look at another issue that way, it does have a different vibe. I thought it was very cool.
I heard very good things from a lot of people, so I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet.
But if you're not into horror and you don't like that whole thing about being scared, then
no, really
you might not want to watch it. Same with Black Mirror though. I think Black Mirror is amazing.
I think Black Mirror is amazing. The few episodes I've seen, but it's one of it's always like, oh, I should totally watch another one. I'm like, oh, it's going to be really depressing, isn't it?
It is a bit hard to watch multiple episodes in a row. I don't think you have to kind of be in the mood for it because it is pretty depressing.
And just like horror movies, there's a lot of things where I'm rarely in the mood unless somebody else shows them, and I usually don't regret if it's a good movie. I'm happy I watched it, but I will rarely put myself in the mood by myself.
Yeah.
Well, Black Mirror sometimes, but it was also because friends were like, no, just look at this one, it's really good, and I was like, yeah, it is really good. It's also kind of like messed up, but yeah, really good.
It is, well, yeah, and it does.
And I feel like I should have watched all the Black Mirror episodes because of my interests and the work I do and etc.
Yeah, me too, and I haven't watched them all, and it does make me. Although it does, after watching an episode, I do feel like why. I did very much like the question, why are we here? Like, is the world that messed up? Are we really being manipulated or like explored? Like, you end up thinking all these things and I think that's what great art does. Right, it allows that kind of exploration. A bit like this question, it allows that kind of exploration, or even this very podcast live stream. What we're providing is this opportunity to explore a big question.
Yeah,
and go from tangents. And teaching tangents.
Well, I hope your pupil will be happy with the answer. I'm not sure this was very satisfying. I'm not entirely sure, but But
Well,
that
that's
said,
good.
I think it's difficult to tackle such a broad question that everybody has at one point or another in their life and provide a ultimately satisfying answer for everyone, which is kind of repeating what I said earlier. Depending on the frame of reference of the person watching or listening this, they'll find it more or less to their taste, I suppose.
Yeah. I think we've reached a natural conclusion point there.
I think we have. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment.
Subscribe, like it, leave comments, send
Pose more
questions to James so that I don't see them.
Yeah, I'm going to be collecting more this week. I should be able to get more.
Cool.
Much more. Mostly I go in the sixth form common room, and usually I'm getting ready for a lesson or something, and I'll say something annoying, and then I'll get loads of questions.
Fantastic.
That's mostly what I do. I think maybe that's what they missed. They missed someone who interacts with them and asks them stupid stuff. Or, sorry, not stupid, interesting stuff. Great. Thanks, Willem.
Fantastic. Have a great Sunday. Thank you.